Hello and welcome back to something I'm really excited to talk about today. It's totally revolutionised, maybe a little bit dramatic, but revolutionised my life in the last year. I think I've been using it a year now, and that's Bokashi Composting, because it has saved what goes in our bin by, 50%, really it has. The only thing going in our bin now from our family waste is any plastics that we can't recycle. So of course we try to avoid plastic and as much as we can, but we live in this world and we have a young family. We end up having some plastic waste from convenience food, crisp packets, film that comes off different things. So although we've cut down our plastic a lot, we still have some going in our bin. But literally that's the only thing going in is dry films and packets that we can't recycle, which means we're rarely taking out a bin, maybe once every 2 weeks, and we're able to just compact that down and put it out. And literally the only reason we put it out is because the bin man's coming and it's getting a little bit full, because it doesn't smell at all. So this is how it can revolutionise your family's waste, particularly if you have a young family like this little boy here who's just started weaning. And see, like, he's just eating something now and he's dropped it on the floor, and will want something else, will cut crusts off for things. Even my daughter as well, she's very good at eating, but there's often leftovers on her plate. So that all goes in this amazing Bokashi bin. Obviously we composted before. We put all of our vegetable scraps in the compost, little bits of cardboard, anything we could. But the difference with Bokashi is you can put everything in it, and I mean everything. Fish, meat bones, cooked foods. It won't attract rodents, so you can put any kind of cooked breads in, ends of crusts, the knobs off the end of the bread, leftovers from your plates, dairy products, cheeses. It can all go in, including the normal things you would. And what I find great about it is if, so for example, my daughter came home from a party this week and she had a cake that came in a paper napkin. So obviously I could put the paper napkin in a normal compost bin, but it all had crumbs and sticky bits of icing on, so that would normally go in the bin. But because it's Bokashi, we can put that in too. So I find it really great for family waste, as well as if you live in a small home. This doesn't take up much space. You do have to do something with Bokashi that goes in afterwards, but I will talk about that in a minute. So this is the Bokashi bin here. It's not too big, it goes nicely in our kitchen, and as you will see, it has a little tap on it. So what we do, first of all, is we fill our compost caddy here, we fill it with our kitchen waste. So in there now there's some tea bags, there's little bits of sandwich that this guy didn't finish the other day, there's some apple cores, there's some ends of the courgettes that we cooked last night, and a little bit of pasta. I don't know where that came from, but it's all in there. This is a nice size, any kind of caddy you can have for your kitchen, to create one layer of Bokashi. And this is the Bokashi brand that you're going to need to add to your layers. I'd say that's the only downside really, is that you have to buy the Bokashi brand. It came initially in a set with 2 of these boxes, so you fill one, layering with the Bokashi brand as you go, so it all came in the set, and then it came with a second box. So while this is sitting and almost pickling is what it's like, you use the second one. It takes us maybe 3 weeks to fill it, so this will take us a couple of days to fill. We'll then empty one of this into the Bokashi. Now let me get this right, it's an anaerobic system, composting system. So that means it goes without air. Use your little squasher here to press down the food that you've put in to get as much air out as possible. You then layer in a spoonful of your Bokashi brand, then cover it with the lid, and try not to open the lid unless you really need to, because like I said, it's working without air. So don't just have one bit of carrot and open it to throw it in there. Only open it when you need to open it. You also need to drain off any liquid inside. This liquid does it smell? It doesn't really smell bad, but it does smell a bit kind of like pickling or or like the hops off beer, which I think does make, that's the kind of thing that makes the bran. So that's probably why it smells like that. But you can use it as a fertilizer for your plants. Do it diluted, about 1 part of the Bokashi juice to 100 parts water. So you only want a few drops in a watering can, but it is supposed to be a good fertilizer for your plants. You can also pour it down the sink. Because it's quite acidic, it is good at breaking down any gunk in your sink. So I tend to pour it down by the sink, followed by a good dose of hot water to make sure that it doesn't sort of hang around smelling. I really don't mind the smell, but my partner doesn't like it, so I tend to do it when he's not there. Once it's full, set it aside for a couple of weeks. That's why you then have the second bin to fill that up when you are filling the other one. So you can work them round in a rotation system. You then need to do something with the Bokashi bran. Once it's set aside, leave it for about 2 weeks minimum. Doesn't matter if you leave it for longer. You want it in a cool, dry place, really, not in direct sunlight. You can leave it inside, that would be absolutely fine. It doesn't smell, especially if you live in an apartment or something, that would be great. But I tend to just put it in a shady corner of the garden. You then need to dig it somewhere, technically. It needs to be covered to put it to break down. When you open the lid after the 2 weeks of it sitting aside, it will still look like your scraps. It will still look like your food, but just covered in the bran. But it's essentially been pickled, so it's not going to attract rats. And once it gets covered in soil, it should break down really quickly. Within a month, it should be broken down. You can dig that straight into your garden. So you could dig a trench in your garden, put the Bokashi in, and then cover it with soil. I don't like to do that because A, it's a bit faffy, and B, I work on the principle of gardening, which is no dig. So not disturbing the soil as much as possible, because there's lots of wormies in there and you're letting out the carbon dioxide and you're damaging the structure of the soil. So although you'll be encouraging worms by putting the Bokashi in there, I just personally, that goes against my ethos of gardening, so I don't like to do it. So what I do is I add it to my already breaking down compost bin. I've got a compost bin in my garden that I now don't obviously put my kitchen scraps into. I used to, but now I just fill it with garden scraps, leaves, plants that I've dug up, pots, whatever the case may be, it goes in there. Or sometimes if I've just got some fruit peelings or something, they go in there as well. You need to turn that compost before you put it in, really. Turning compost will help it break down anyway, but I turn it so that it makes a bit of a hole then to add the Bokashi in, and then I turn more of the compost on top. What I actually like to do is, because I've got 2 compost bins in my garden, is to let one break down once I've filled it with garden waste, and then start filling my second one with garden waste. The one that's now breaking down, I add the Bokashi to. So that really accelerates its broken down process. I used to leave them for a year to break down. Now me adding the Bokashi to them as well, which means A, I'm turning it more often, probably every 3 weeks, every month at the most, and adding the Bokashi in, which really seems to bring in the worms, brings in so many more worms. When I open the lid of the compost bin, I cannot believe it. And I'm can use that compost after 6 months now, which is amazing. I have left this particular one that I'm showing you in the example here for longer, just because I didn't need the compost at the time. It was middle of summer, so I was waiting till the autumn when I wanted to spread it onto my plants. So I just carried on adding the Bokashi to it to increase the volume of it. And it's breaking down unbelievably, so good. So just to recap, I turn the compost, put the Bokashi in, and then turn some more compost over it, or add some matter on top of it. Sometimes I've got some pots that I need to empty, or some leaves from around the garden, I put that on top. As long as the Bokashi is covered, it will start breaking down incredibly quickly. And by the next time you come to add your next load of Bokashi, you'll notice that it's pretty much gone, which is unbelievable. Of course, after you've emptied out your Bokashi bin into your compost or into the garden, wherever you've decided you're going to put it, you're going to need to clean it out because it can get a little bit smelly, so make sure you give it a good clean. I do find putting a little scoop of bicarbonate of soda gives it a really nice scrub and stops any smells staying, especially in the bit where the juice comes out. Which brings me on to the point that makes it a great system if you live in a small, like a flat or apartment. You're probably wondering, okay, great, it doesn't take much room in my kitchen, but what am I going to do with the soil afterwards, or where am I going to dig it into the soil? That depends if you've got the space to store some soil. I've seen a brilliant YouTube video. I will link her YouTube video to how she composts on her balcony below, where she has a container of soil it's a container with a lid. So then she puts her bokashi in it and covers it over with the compost, and then she just stores it. She has a bit of a storage area, so whether you've got maybe a garage in your flat or a storage area that you could put it in, as long as it's a dark place where the soil's covered, she's put the lid on it so it's not going to smell or attract anything. It then breaks down, and then she can use the soil in her containers and her pots that she has on her balcony, so that's a really great option. Also, you can think about donating it to someone. I'm sure if you live in a flat or an apartment, you've got someone that likes gardening, so you could either give it to them to put in their compost, or you could do as she did, cover it in soil in a container, and when the soil's done you can go and donate it. Even if you contacted your local allotment society or a neighbour or anybody, a friend or family that has a garden, you can put soil into their garden, and even if they don't do much gardening, it will bring life and soil health to their garden, which is a benefit even if you don't even go out there. Just a little old bed that's got a bit of mint in it or something, just pop it in there, and that is a really brilliant way to use up your food waste without it either going to landfill, or even if you have a brown bin, which we don't. It's so annoying that our council don't have brown bins that take away food waste. I still wouldn't give my food waste away because I want to keep it for my own garden's nutrients. But this bokashi system is a great way to get around all of those scenarios. Now, I hope I've convinced you that this is a really brilliant thing to have in your kitchen. It's going to cut down your food waste, especially if you have a young family, especially if you have a weaning child, that there's always going to be leftovers, and there's always going to be things in general life. We try to keep our food waste down, but things get sent to the back of the fridge by accident that go mouldy or whatever. Life happens. So this is a great option to bring nutrients to your garden, to cut your food waste. If you're interested and perhaps haven't covered some of your questions, I've got 2 articles which I will link below. One of them is Bokashi 101, which just goes into detail of what I do within my system, and the second one is Bokashi frequently asked questions. So any questions that I've had over the years or that I've found that people struggle with, I've answered all in that article over on my blog, which is hannahLgorman.com. And to make it easier, I'll leave a link below for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again soon. Bye bye.